On her birthday dinner, her billionaire CEO husband walked in with his pregnant mistress. He called her his wife, but her shocking announcement flipped the whole room. The dining room went silent as Tristan stood, his hand resting possessively on the pregnant woman's shoulder. He smiled at Diana across the table laden with untouched birthday cake. Her birthday cake. "I need to make an announcement," Tristan said, his voice carrying that boardroom confidence Diana had once found attractive. "Diana, I think it's time we were honest with each other. With everyone." Diana set down her fork slowly, carefully, the way you move when you're afraid any sudden motion might shatter you completely. "Honest?" she repeated quietly. "This is Vanessa." Tristan gestured to the young woman beside him, her hand cradling her swollen belly like a trophy. "We've been together for 18 months. She's 12 weeks pregnant. And I'm in love with her." Camilla, Tristan's mother, gasped. But Diana noticed how quickly that gasp transformed into calculation as Vanessa smiled nervously and added, "My father owns the Martin's luxury department store chain, 4 locations across the country." "Tristan," Diana's voice was steady. "Too steady. You brought your pregnant mistress to my birthday dinner to announce you're leaving me on my 30th birthday. I thought you deserved the truth," he said, and he actually believed he was being kind. Diana could see it in his face. "Our marriage has been over for years. You know that. I need someone who matches my ambition. Someone who understands the kind of life I'm building." Have you ever made yourself smaller for someone you loved? Dimmed your light because you thought that's what it took to keep them? Before I tell you how 3 words from her mouth brought an entire family empire crashing down, before I show you the moment her husband realized what he'd thrown away, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline. Hit that subscribe button because this story will take turns you won't see coming. Smash the like button because what happens next is the kind of revenge that will restore your faith that standing up for yourself is always worth it. Now let me show you how she became invisible in the first place. Let's get back into the story. Diana looked at Vanessa, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. Then at Camilla, whose eyes had already shifted to social opportunity. At Tristan's father Ethan, nodding slowly like this was a reasonable business merger. At his siblings Maggie and Louis, barely suppressing their entertainment. At this family who had spent 3 years treating her like she was the help. And Diana smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You need someone who matches your ambition," she repeated. "Someone who understands the kind of life you're building." "Exactly." Tristan looked relieved. "I knew you'd understand. We can handle the divorce quietly. I'll be fair about assets, of course." "Assets," Diana said softly. She stood, and something in her movement made the entire table go still. "Let's talk about assets, Tristan. Let's talk about the architecture firm that was bankrupt 2 years ago. The one that somehow got an anonymous investor at the last minute." Ethan's face went pale. "Let's talk about this estate," Diana continued, her voice growing stronger. "The one that was in foreclosure. The one that somehow got saved by anonymous loan payments." Camilla's hand went to her throat. "Let's talk about assets," Diana said again, and now she was looking directly at Tristan. "Like the fact that I am worth $200 million. That I have been supporting your entire family while you all mocked my little sewing hobby. That the anonymous investor who saved everything you have was me." The silence that followed was absolute. Tristan's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's impossible," he finally whispered. "You don't even work." Diana reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. With 2 taps, the dining room's smart screen lit up with an image. Fashion show. Models in breathtaking gowns. Red carpet photos of celebrities. News articles with the headline, "The Mystery of M.A., Fashion's Greatest Anonymous Designer." "My name is Diana Anderson," she said quietly, "and I am M.A. I have been M.A. since I was 16 years old. Every Oscar gown you've seen with my signature crimson butterfly. Every fashion critic calling me a generational genius. That's me. The woman you just humiliated at her own birthday dinner is one of the most celebrated designers in the world." Vanessa took a step backward, her face draining of color. So when you talk about assets, Tristan, understand this. You have nothing. Your firm exists because of me. This house stands because of me. Your family's entire social position has been propped up by the woman you treated like she was beneath you. Diana picked up her purse, her movements elegant and final. I'm filing for divorce. I'm withdrawing every dollar of support. And in 2 hours, I have a press conference at the Metropolitan Fashion Institute where I'm revealing my identity to the world. Front row seats are reserved for the Parker family. If you'd like to watch the nobody you married accept the fashion industry's highest honors. She walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at Tristan one final time. Happy birthday to me, she said. And then she was gone, leaving behind a family built on her money and a husband who had just gambled away a fortune he never knew he had. But to understand how Diana became invisible enough to hide a $200 million empire, how she made herself so small that her own husband didn't see her, we need to go back. Back to before the betrayal, before the press conference, before the moment she finally remembered who she was. We need to go back to the beginning. 7 years earlier, Diana stood in a small gallery in the Arts District, her heart still raw with grief. Her mother had been dead for 3 months. The funeral flowers had wilted and been thrown away. The casseroles from neighbors had stopped coming. And her father, the renowned architect Isaac Anderson, had retreated so far into his own mourning that he barely acknowledged his daughter's existence anymore. Diana was 23 and drowning in a loneliness so profound it felt like drowning. The gallery was hosting a small opening for local artists. Diana had volunteered to help with the event, grateful for any excuse to leave her father's empty, echoing house. She was hanging photographs when a voice behind her said, "You're doing that wrong." She turned to find a man about her age, tall and handsome in that clean-cut corporate way. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, the kind of man who looked like he'd walked out of a business magazine. "Excuse me," Diana said. "The lighting." He gestured at the photograph she was adjusting. "It's better if you angle it slightly left. Catches the overhead spots better." He wasn't wrong. Diana adjusted the frame, and the image immediately looked more professional. "Thank you," she said. "Tristan Parker." He extended his hand. "I'm here with a client. Architecture firm, we design commercial spaces. Always looking for art to feature in our lobbies." "Diana Anderson." His eyes widened slightly. "Anderson? As in Isaac Anderson, the architect." Diana's stomach tightened. This was always how it went. People wanted to know her father, not her. "He's my father," she admitted. But Tristan surprised her. "That must be hard. Having a famous parent. Everyone probably expects you to be just like him." Diana blinked. No one had ever said that before. They usually gushed about her father's brilliance and asked if she was following in his footsteps. "It is hard," she said quietly. "Especially lately." They talked through the entire opening. Tristan was charming, attentive, interested. He asked about her life, her interests. When Diana mentioned she did some design work, he didn't dismiss it. "What kind of design?" he asked. "Fashion, mostly. It's just a hobby." The lie came easily. She'd been hiding her MA identity for 7 years by then, had already dressed 3 Oscar winners, had already been featured in Vogue. But she called it a hobby because that felt safer. "I'd love to see your work sometime," Tristan said. And he sounded genuine. They exchanged numbers. He texted her that same night. They had coffee the next day. And Diana, lonely and grieving and desperate to be seen by someone, anyone, fell hard and fast. 3 months into dating, Tristan said the words that should have been a warning. They were having dinner at an upscale restaurant, the kind of place Tristan loved because of who might see him there. He reached across the table and took her hand. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I've dated a lot of women, ambitious women, career-focused women, women who were so wrapped up in their own success they didn't have time for partnership." Diana waited, uncertain where this was going. "You're different," Tristan continued. "You're gentle, real, not intimidating, not trying to compete with me or prove something. You're someone I can actually build a life with." Diana had heard, "You're safe." You won't outshine me. But in her grief and loneliness, she'd chosen to hear. You're perfect exactly as you are. I love that you're not one of those women obsessed with their careers, Tristan said, squeezing her hand. I love that you value relationships and home and the quieter things in life. That's so rare. And because Diana was young and wounded and had been making herself invisible for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to take up space. She smiled and said, I value those things too. She didn't tell him about the fashion show she'd designed the previous month under her pseudonym. Didn't mention the trust fund from her grandmother that had already grown to $70 million through careful investments. Didn't explain that her hobby had already made her more successful than he might ever be. She wanted to be loved for herself. Just herself. The small, gentle, uncomplicated version that required no explanation. The proposal came 6 months later. Tristan's family had just met her for the first time, and the dinner had been excruciating. Camilla Parker had looked Diana up and down like she was evaluating livestock. Anderson, she'd mused. Any relation to the architect? My father, Diana had said. How lovely. And what do you do, dear? I do some design work. Fashion. Maggie had laughed, actually laughed. Fashion design? How quaint. Are you trying to break into the industry? Diana could have said, I've already broken into it. I'm at the top of it. Instead, she'd said quietly, it's more of a hobby. How sweet, Camilla had said in a tone that meant the opposite. Tristan has always been attracted to simpler girls. Less complicated. Ethan had been blunt. What does your father think about you marrying down? Diana had been too shocked to respond. Marrying down? Tristan's family was comfortable, certainly, but they weren't wealthy. The estate was mortgaged. The architecture firm was struggling. They lived on the fumes of old money and social positioning. But she'd said nothing, and Tristan had said nothing in her defense. 2 weeks later, he'd proposed at a restaurant, in front of an audience, with a ring he'd clearly overspent on. Marry me, he'd said. Be my partner. Help me build the life I've always dreamed of. And Diana, still aching from her mother's death, still desperate to belong somewhere, had said yes. The wedding was small. Diana's father attended but left early, too lost in his own grief to fully participate in her joy. Tristan's family attended and made pointed comments about the venue being modest, the flowers being simple, the whole affair being rather understated. Well, Camilla had said, adjusting her hat, I suppose not everyone needs a society wedding. They'd moved into the guest house on the Parker estate temporarily while looking for their own place. Temporary became 6 months. 6 months became a year. A year became 3. And somewhere in those 3 years, Diana had disappeared completely. It happened gradually. Small concessions that seemed reasonable in isolation. That dress is a bit much, don't you think? Tristan said one morning when Diana wore something she designed herself. A vibrant blue piece with intricate beadwork. We're just having brunch with my parents. Maybe wear something more understated. Diana changed into beige. Do you have to spend so much time in that garage studio? He asked another time. My family thinks it's odd, like you're avoiding them. Diana started designing only late at night, in stolen hours when everyone was asleep. I invited the Hendersons for dinner, Tristan announced one evening. Important potential clients. Can you make that thing my mother makes? The beef Wellington? Diana, who had been planning to finish a commission that night, had said, of course. Each small erasure, each little diminishment, each time she made herself smaller to fit into the life Tristan wanted. And through it all, she kept her secret, kept designing under her pseudonym, kept her trust fund hidden, kept the checks from fashion houses routed to a separate account Tristan didn't know existed. She told herself she was protecting her art, keeping it pure from judgment. Really, she was protecting herself from the truth. That she'd married a man who loved her only when she was small enough not to threaten him. The Parker family made their feelings about Diana abundantly clear. Sunday brunches were exercises in subtle cruelty. Diana, dear, you really should do something about your hair, Camilla would say, her smile sharp. It's so plain. Tristan's ex-girlfriend Melissa had the most wonderful stylist. "I like my hair," Diana would respond quietly. "Of course you do, dear." Maggie was worse. She worked for a fashion magazine, which meant she had opinions about Diana's little hobby. "Still playing with your sewing machine?" she'd ask, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Tristan mentioned you're designing again. How cute. I actually work with real designers. The difference between amateur and professional is quite stark." Diana, who had 3 of her designs being featured in that exact magazine under her MA label, would simply nod and say, "I'm sure it is. Louis, Tristan's younger brother, liked to focus on money. Must be nice," he'd say, lounging in designer clothes his parents bought him. "Not having to work, just living off Tristan's income. Some women have all the luck." Diana never pointed out that she'd never taken $1 from Tristan, that she paid for all her own supplies, her own clothes, her own everything from accounts he didn't know existed. Ethan was perhaps the cruelest because his dismissal was absolute. He simply didn't see her, would look right through her at family gatherings, would ask Tristan questions about the household as if Diana wasn't sitting right there. "Son, are you managing the finances all right? Supporting a wife can be expensive." "We're fine, Dad," Tristan would say, never mentioning that Diana had never asked him for anything. And Tristan himself. Tristan transformed from the charming man who'd pursued her to someone Diana barely recognized. He criticized her cooking. "My mother makes this better." He criticized her appearance. "You're letting yourself go. Maybe hit the gym more." He criticized her quietness. "You barely talk at parties. It's embarrassing. People think you're boring." He criticized her passion. "You're in that garage again? Diana, it's just a hobby. You're not actually going to do anything with it. Maybe focus on making our home life better instead." Each criticism landed like a stone. And Diana, who had been taught by her mother to be strong, who had built a fashion empire on her own terms, who had inherited brilliance and courage, absorbed each stone and built a wall around herself. She made herself smaller and smaller, believing that eventually she'd be small enough to be loved. But it's impossible to shrink yourself enough to satisfy someone who needs you to disappear entirely. The affair started 18 months before the birthday dinner. Though Diana didn't know it at the time, she noticed changes. Tristan came home later, smelled different, like perfume that wasn't hers, smiled at his phone with an expression she hadn't seen directed at her in years. "Who are you texting?" she'd asked once, trying to sound casual. "Work," he'd snapped. "Can I not have privacy?" His laptop became password protected. His phone stayed face down on every surface. He started going to the gym at odd hours. Started caring about his appearance again in a way he hadn't in years. Diana told herself she was paranoid. That grief and loneliness were making her suspicious. That a good wife trusted her husband. But at night, lying next to a man who'd stopped touching her months ago, she knew the truth. She just couldn't bring herself to face it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. Diana was in her studio, working on a design that had been haunting her for weeks. A crimson gown that seemed to consume itself in flames at the hem, then rise into elegant resurrection at the bodice. The phoenix gown, she'd been calling it in her mind. She was so absorbed in the work that she didn't hear Tristan enter. "Diana!" She looked up, needle paused mid-stitch. Tristan stood in the doorway of the garage studio, backlit by morning sun. He looked tired, older than his 30 years. "We need to talk," he said. Diana set down her work carefully. "All right, this isn't working." He gestured between them. This marriage. You have to feel it too." Diana's heart hammered, but her voice stayed calm. "Feel what?" "That we're not happy. That we haven't been happy in a long time." Tristan ran a hand through his hair. "I think we made a mistake. We got married too young, for the wrong reasons." "What were the wrong reasons?" Diana asked. "You wanted stability after your mother died. I wanted someone uncomplicated. But people change, Diana. I've changed. I need more than this." "More than what?" "More than quiet mornings and mediocre conversation. More than a wife who hides in a garage and plays with fabric. I need someone who matches my ambition. Someone who challenges me. Someone who's actually going somewhere in life. Each word landed like a physical blow. I see, Diana said quietly. I don't think you do. Tristan's voice carried frustration now. I'm suffocating here, Diana. In this marriage. With you. You're so passive. So content to just exist. I need a partner, not a dependent. Diana almost laughed. Almost told him right then. That his dependent was worth $200 million. That his passive wife had dressed half of Hollywood. That the woman he was suffocating with had been keeping his entire family afloat financially. Instead, she said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet. I just needed you to know I'm not happy. That something needs to change." He left her there, surrounded by her designs, sitting in the garage studio his family mocked. Diana looked at the phoenix gown, the dress consuming itself, the resurrection that wouldn't quite take shape. And she made a decision. That same afternoon, she called Patricia Mendoza, the curator at the Metropolitan Fashion Institute and one of 3 people who knew her true identity. "Patricia," Diana said, "I'm ready." "Ready for what, darling?" "To step into the light. To reveal myself. All of it." There was a pause on the other end. Then Patricia's voice, warm and knowing. "It's about time." "What changed?" "Everything," Diana said. "Absolutely everything." They planned it for 3 weeks out. A press conference. A retrospective exhibition. The full revelation of Emme's identity after 15 years of secrecy. Diana spent those 3 weeks preparing. Not just for the professional revelation, but for the personal one. She met with divorce attorneys, compiled evidence of her separate assets, documented every anonymous payment she'd made to save the Parker family from their own financial incompetence. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She was simply done. Done shrinking. Done hiding. Done believing that making herself invisible would somehow make her loved. The night before the press conference, Diana couldn't sleep. She lay next to Tristan, who snored softly, his phone charging on the nightstand. It buzzed repeatedly with messages he'd answer in the bathroom with the door locked. She thought about the girl she'd been 7 years ago, grieving and lost and desperate to belong somewhere. She thought about her mother, the brilliant textile artist who'd taught Diana that creating beautiful things was a form of prayer. She thought about the empire she'd built in secret, the trust fund she'd grown, the designs that had changed contemporary fashion while she hid behind a pseudonym. And she thought about Tristan, who'd loved her only when he believed she was beneath him. At 2 a.m., his phone lit up with a message. Diana, unable to sleep, saw it clearly. "Vanessa, can't wait to see you tomorrow. I miss falling asleep next to you." Diana got up quietly, went to her studio, and finished the phoenix gown. As the sun rose, she held the completed design up to the light. The flames at the hem seemed to dance. The resurrection at the bodice seemed to breathe. It was perfect. It was prophecy. And Diana finally understood. Sometimes you have to let your old self burn completely before you can rise into what you're meant to become. She hung the gown carefully, showered, and dressed in midnight blue silk. Her grandmother's pearls. Her mother's vintage heels. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. But she remembered her. This confident, powerful, unapologetic version. This was who she'd been before she learned to hide. Diana smiled at her reflection. "Welcome back," she whispered. Then she left a note for Tristan on the kitchen counter. "Gone to handle personal business. I'll meet you at your parents' house for brunch at 11. We need to talk." She drove to the Metropolitan Fashion Institute as the city woke around her. The new wing rose like a cathedral of glass and light. Her wing, funded by her anonymous donations. Patricia met her at a private entrance. "You look radiant," Patricia said, embracing her. "Like you've finally remembered who you are." "I have," Diana said simply. They walked through the exhibition together. 15 years of Diana's work displayed on mannequins. Lit perfectly, celebrated openly. Her early pieces, designed at 17 while processing her mother's death. raw and emotional. Her college work, experimental and bold. The sustainable fashion line she'd launched at 25. The red carpet gowns that had become iconic. And there, in the center of the main gallery, the Phoenix gown. Crimson and resurrection. Destruction and rebirth. It's magnificent, Patricia breathed. Diana, this is your masterpiece. Diana looked at the gown, at the flames consuming the hem, at the elegant rise into beauty at the bodice. It's my story, she said. I just didn't know it yet when I designed it. Patricia checked her watch. The press conference starts at 2. Your father just arrived. He's in the front row. He looks so proud. Her father. They'd barely spoken in 3 years, both lost in separate griefs. But when Diana had told him about the revelation, about everything, he'd wept. My brilliant girl, he'd said. Your mother would be so proud. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm so sorry. You see me now, Diana had told him. That's what matters. A commotion at the main entrance made them both turn. Ms. Mendoza, a security guard hurried over. There's a man here. Says he's married to Diana Anderson. He's demanding backstage access. He has his phone out, showing pictures of someone's designs, asking questions about MA. Diana's stomach tightened. Tristan. He's causing quite a scene, the guard continued, insisting he has a right to be here. Says his wife works here as a volunteer and he's looking for her. Patricia looked at Diana. What do you want me to do? Diana thought about it. Thought about Tristan discovering her secret before she could reveal it on her own terms. Thought about him trying to insert himself into her triumph. Then she smiled. Give him backstage access, she said. I want him to see everything. Are you sure? Absolutely. He wanted a wife who matched his ambition. Let's show him what ambition actually looks like. Tristan appeared moments later, slightly out of breath, his expression cycling between confusion and something approaching panic. He stopped short when he saw Diana in her blue silk dress and pearls, standing in front of a massive projection of the MA signature crimson butterfly. Diana? What are you doing here? I thought you were meeting us at brunch. Change of plans, Diana said calmly. But the press conference. Starting soon. For that designer, MA Security said you have backstage access. How do you even have that authority? His eyes darted around, taking in the exhibition, the preparations, Patricia standing protectively at Diana's side. Diana didn't answer. She simply smiled and said, You wanted to meet MA, didn't you? I heard you asking the curators about her identity. Congratulations, Tristan. You're about to get exactly what you wanted. I don't understand. You will. In about 5 minutes, you'll understand everything. Patricia touched Diana's arm gently. It's time. The exhibition hall had filled with 300 people. Fashion critics, journalists, collectors, designers, celebrities. The energy thrummed with 15 years of anticipation finally about to be satisfied. Diana stood in the wings, watching them take their seats. Front row, she saw her father. Saw him notice her and offer a small, proud smile. Third row, she saw them. The Parkers. All of them. Camilla in designer clothes Diana had probably designed. Ethan checking his phone with bored impatience. Maggie and Louis whispering to each other, probably mocking everyone around them. And Vanessa, sitting beside an empty seat, her hand on her pregnant belly, checking her phone with a small, secret smile. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia's voice rang out over the sound system. Please take your seats. We're about to begin. The hall fell silent. Patricia walked onto the stage to thunderous anticipation. The backdrop displayed Diana's signature, the crimson butterfly. Good afternoon. I'm Patricia Mendoza, Chief Curator of the Metropolitan's Contemporary Wing. For 15 years, the fashion world has been captivated by Maison Anderson. We've analyzed every stitch, debated every design, created elaborate theories about this designer's identity. The crowd leaned forward as one. Today, those questions are answered. It is my profound honor to introduce you to someone who has revolutionized contemporary fashion while maintaining complete anonymity. Someone whose designs have graced red carpets across the world. Someone who has donated over $43 million to fashion education while living in deliberate obscurity. Diana took a breath. This was it. The moment everything changed. Ladies and gentlemen, M.A. Diana Anderson. Diana walked onto the stage. The spotlight found her. 300 faces turned toward her as one. The silence stretched for one heartbeat. Then another. Then chaos. Cameras flashed like lightning. Voices erupted in questions, exclamations, shock. The assembled crowd rose to their feet. Some applauded wildly. Others simply stared in disbelief. From her position at the podium, Diana could see everything. Her father, tears streaming down his face, clapping with fierce pride. Critics she recognized from glowing reviews now staring with expressions of awe. Collectors who'd spent millions on her designs, realizing they'd passed her in these very halls without a second glance. And the Parkers, all of them frozen in various stages of shock. Camilla's face had gone sheet white, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Ethan looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Maggie and Louis were frantically typing on their phones, clearly searching for information, for proof, for something to make this make sense. And Tristan stood frozen in the back, his expression cycling through disbelief, horror, and finally, devastating understanding. Vanessa clutched his arm. Her earlier confidence evaporated, replaced by dawning comprehension that she'd helped destroy something far more valuable than she'd realized. Diana let the noise wash over her for a long moment. Let them process. Let them understand that the woman they'd dismissed, the wife they'd tolerated, the daughter-in-law they'd mocked, was standing on a stage accepting accolades they could never dream of achieving. She raised her hand. The room quieted with the respect reserved for revealed genius. "Thank you," Diana said, her voice steady, amplified perfectly. "I know you have questions. I'll answer what I can." A journalist stood immediately, voice shaking with excitement. "Ms. Anderson, why the anonymity? Why hide for 15 years? Diana had prepared for this question, had rehearsed the professional answer about letting the work speak for itself. Instead, she told the truth. "Because I wanted to know if what I created mattered. Not my family connections. Not my inheritance. Not any external factor. Just the designs. Just the work." She paused. "And because I spent the last 3 years of my life making myself smaller because I believed that's what love required. I was wrong." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was more than a professional revelation. This was personal. Real love, true partnership, celebrates your full self. Diana continued, her eyes finding Tristan in the crowd. "It doesn't ask you to diminish. It doesn't require you to hide your light. It doesn't need you to be less so someone else can feel like more." Another journalist, scenting the deeper story. "Is it true you've donated over $40 million to fashion programs anonymously?" Patricia stepped forward smoothly. $43 million to be exact. "We've confirmed the numbers. Ms. Anderson has been the largest anonymous donor to fashion education in this city's history. She's also been a significant anonymous investor in various cultural institutions and several private businesses." More chaos. More questions shouted over each other. But Diana was still looking at Tristan, watching understanding destroy him in real time, watching him finally see her, really see her, and realizing what he'd thrown away. From the third row, Camilla suddenly stood, her voice shrill enough to cut through the commotion. "This is absurd. That's my son's wife. She doesn't have this kind of success. She sews in a garage. This is some sort of mistake." The entire hall fell silent. Every camera swung toward Camilla. Patricia's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I can confirm that Diana Anderson is indeed married to Tristan Parker. I can also confirm that the trust fund left to her by her grandmother was valued at $50 million upon her 18th birthday. With careful investment and her extraordinarily successful design career over the past 15 years, Ms. Anderson's personal net worth is currently estimated at approximately $200 million. The silence was absolute. Then pandemonium. Journalists were screaming questions. cameras flashing in a strobe light frenzy. The fashion world collectively losing its mind at the revelation. Tristan had gone the color of old paper. Diana watched him mouth the words 200 million, like they were in a foreign language. Patricia wasn't done. She was clearly enjoying herself now. Furthermore, Ms. Anderson has been a primary anonymous investor in several local businesses and properties, including Parker Architecture, which would have declared bankruptcy approximately 2 years ago without her financial intervention. She has also anonymously covered significant debt payments for the Parker family estate, preventing foreclosure proceedings. Camilla swayed dangerously. Ethan actually sat down hard, his legs apparently giving out. The journalists were screaming now, scenting blood in the water. The story had just transformed from fashion revelation to society scandal. Ms. Anderson, a reporter pushed forward. Can you confirm you've been financially supporting your husband's family while they were unaware of your wealth? Diana stepped back to the microphone. The hall quieted immediately, hungry for her words. I can confirm that I've made anonymous investments in various businesses and properties, including those belonging to my husband's family. I did so because I loved someone, because I believed that supporting his family would help our marriage, because I thought that making him successful would help him see me. Her voice didn't waver, didn't break. I was wrong. You can't buy love with money or sacrifice or making yourself invisible. Love is freely given or it's nothing at all. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. Which is why I'm announcing today, along with my professional identity, that I filed for divorce this morning, that I'm withdrawing all financial support from the Parker family and associated businesses, and that I'm stepping fully into the life I've been hiding from for far too long. The hall erupted again, and from the back, Tristan's voice cracked through the chaos. Diana, no, you can't do this. He was pushing through the crowd now, Vanessa trailing behind him uncertainly. This is blackmail, Tristan shouted, his face red, his composure completely shattered. We had an agreement. You can't just walk away. Security was already moving toward him, but Diana raised her hand. Let him speak, she said calmly. Tristan stopped at the edge of the stage, looking up at her. Really looking at her for perhaps the first time in 3 years. Diana, please, we can talk about this. Privately. Not here. Why not here? Diana asked. You announced your affair at my birthday dinner in front of your entire family. You brought your pregnant mistress into my home. You humiliated me publicly. Why shouldn't I respond publicly? That's different. How? Tristan's mouth opened, closed. He had no answer. We had a prenuptial agreement, Patricia called helpfully from the side of the stage, holding up papers that absolutely had not existed until she created them 3 weeks ago with the help of excellent lawyers. One that clearly states any assets brought into the marriage remain separate property. Ms. Anderson is entitled to nothing of yours, Mr. Parker, and you are entitled to nothing of hers. I never signed a prenup, Tristan started to say. But his voice died as Patricia simply smiled and held up documents with signatures that would absolutely hold up in any court. The beauty of having unlimited resources and excellent legal teams. Security was gently but firmly escorting Tristan back now. He looked around wildly, searching for support, for help, for something to grasp onto. He found only cameras, only journalists, only the entire fashion world watching him realize he'd gambled away a fortune. Vanessa had disappeared entirely, apparently deciding this wasn't the social elevation she'd signed up for. The press conference continued for another hour. Questions about Diana's work, her process, her inspirations, her future plans. She answered with the confidence of someone who'd finally remembered how to inhabit her full self. Talked about sustainable fashion initiatives, about the scholarship program she was launching, about the retrospective tour that would travel to museums worldwide. And through it all, in the back of the hall, the Parker family stood frozen. Camilla's social veneer cracking on camera. Ethan's face ashen with financial panic. Maggie and Louis realizing their mockery had been broadcast to the world. When the conference finally ended, Diana was immediately surrounded. Her father reached her first, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home. "My brilliant girl," Isaac whispered against her hair. "Your mother would be so proud. I'm so sorry I didn't see you these last years. I was too lost in my own grief to notice you disappearing." "I'm here now, Dad," Diana said, holding him tight. "We both are." Critics approached to apologize for not recognizing her at previous events. Collectors congratulated her on the revelation. A museum director from Paris asked about a European retrospective. Through it all, Diana caught glimpses of the Parkers, now surrounded by press asking questions they clearly didn't want to answer. Asking about the financial support they'd accepted from the daughter-in-law they'd mocked. Asking about Tristan's infidelity. Asking if they felt ashamed. Diana felt nothing looking at them. No triumph, no anger, no residual love. Just quiet acceptance that some people are too small to hold the enormity of what you are. Patricia appeared at her elbow with 2 champagne flutes. "To new beginnings," Patricia said. "To truth," Diana corrected. "And to never hiding again." They drank, and Diana felt the last chains fall away. Across the hall, a journalist was interviewing Tristan, who looked shell-shocked and diminished. "Mr. Parker, did you have any idea about your wife's true identity and wealth?" "No," Tristan said hollowly. "I had no idea." "How do you feel learning that the woman you were divorcing is worth $200 million and is one of the most celebrated designers of her generation?" Tristan looked directly at the camera. Diana could see him trying to formulate an answer that would make him look less like a fool. He failed. "I made a terrible mistake," he finally said. The journalist pressed. "Your mother was just quoted as saying Diana was several social classes beneath your family. How do you respond to that now?" Tristan had no response. The interview ended, and Diana watched him walk away from the cameras, from the exhibition, from the revelation of everything he'd destroyed. She felt nothing. That night, Diana stood in the gallery after everyone had left. Just her and Patricia, looking at 15 years of work finally displayed under her real name. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked. Diana walked to the phoenix gown, the dress that consumed itself in flames, then rose into elegant resurrection. She touched the crimson fabric gently. "Free," she said simply. "For the first time in 3 years, I feel completely free." Her phone buzzed. A message from her lawyer. "Divorce papers served. Parker's attorney says he wants to meet." Diana texted back. "Tell him I'll meet once. Neutral territory. Let's end this cleanly." She put her phone away and turned back to her work. Tomorrow, the media would dissect every angle of the story. Tomorrow, her face would be on the cover of every fashion magazine. Tomorrow, the legal dissolution of her marriage would begin in earnest. But tonight, she was finally, completely herself. She walked through the gallery one more time, looking at designs she'd created in secret, in shame, in stolen hours when she'd believed no one would ever value them. She'd been wrong. The work had always mattered. The designs had always been brilliant. She just needed to believe in them, believe in herself, stop hiding. Diana left the Metropolitan as the city lights began to glow. She drove not to the Parker estate, not to the guest house that had been her prison, but to her father's home. Isaac was waiting for her, dinner warm in the oven, the house lit and welcoming. "I'm proud of you," he said, embracing her at the door. "For all of it, the designs, the revelation, the courage to walk away from someone who couldn't see you." They ate dinner together and talked late into the night. About her mother, about grief, about the years they'd both spent lost in separate sorrows while living in the same city. "I want to rebuild this," Isaac said. "Our relationship, the time we lost." "I'd like that too, Dad." Diana slept that night in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by sketches she'd drawn as a teenager, fabric samples her mother had given her, memories of who she'd been before she learned to hide. She slept deeply and without dreams. When she woke, the sun was streaming through windows that faced east. A new day, a new beginning. Her phone had 67 missed calls from Tristan. Diana blocked the number and got dressed. The story had indeed made every news outlet. Her face was everywhere. Headlines ranged from celebratory to scandalous. Fashion's best-kept secret finally revealed: billionaire designers' hidden identity shocks industry. The woman they mocked was funding their lifestyle, society family's wealth built on abuse victims' genius. Diana read them all over coffee, felt nothing but quiet satisfaction that the truth was finally public. Patricia called at 9. "Darling, you've broken the internet. I've had 400 interview requests. Major networks want exclusives. Netflix wants to do a documentary. Everyone wants the full story." "Tell them no," Diana said calmly. "I've said what I needed to say. The work speaks for itself now. I don't need to explain further." "You're sure? This could be enormous for your brand." "The brand is already enormous. I'm sure. No interviews, just the work." She spent the next few days quietly, designing in her father's house, avoiding the media circus, letting the story play out without her participation. The consequences for the Parkers were swift and brutal. Tristan's architecture firm lost every major client within 72 hours. No one wanted association with the man who'd cheated on and humiliated a beloved public figure. His business partner filed to dissolve their partnership publicly, releasing a statement about no longer wanting to be associated with someone of such poor character. Ethan's real estate investments collapsed when Diana's legal team revealed she'd been the anonymous guarantor on his loans. Without her backing, banks called in debts immediately. He couldn't pay. Camilla was removed from every charitable board she'd sat on. Organizations that had benefited from Diana's anonymous donations for years now publicly distanced themselves from the woman who'd mocked their primary benefactor. The social circle she'd ruled with cruelty turned their backs with the swift brutality of people who'd always secretly hated her. Maggie lost her magazine position when readers launched a massive campaign, dredging up old social media posts mocking my boring sister-in-law. The magazine, eager to avoid association with the scandal, let her go. Lewis's startup folded when his investors, many of whom were fashion insiders who admired Diana, pulled their funding publicly and loudly. The estate went into foreclosure proceedings. And Vanessa left Tristan exactly 2 weeks after the press conference, releasing a careful statement through her father's publicist. "I was gravely misled about Mr. Parker's character and financial circumstances. The Martins family does not associate with individuals of such moral bankruptcy. I will be raising my child independently." Even his mistress had standards, apparently. Diana received one communication from Tristan that she actually read. Came through her attorney. A request to meet, to talk, to try to explain. Against her lawyer's advice, Diana agreed to one meeting. They met in a conference room in her attorney's office. Neutral territory. Witnesses present. Tristan arrived looking gaunt. The confidence that had defined him had evaporated entirely, leaving behind a hollow man in a suit he could no longer afford. They sat across a polished conference table. Diana folded her hands and waited. "I didn't know," Tristan finally said. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. "About the money, about your designs, about any of it. If I'd known." "You would have what?" Diana interrupted quietly. "Treated me with basic respect? Loved me? Not cheated on me?" "Tristan, that's exactly the point. You only valued me when you thought I had something to offer. When you believed I was less than you, I wasn't worth your kindness." "That's not fair," Tristan said, his voice breaking slightly. "I did care about you, Diana. I made mistakes." "You didn't make mistakes," Diana said evenly. "You made choices. Consistently. For 3 years. You chose to belittle me, to let your family mock me, to hide me away like I was something to be ashamed of. You chose to have an affair. You chose to bring your pregnant mistress to my birthday dinner. Those weren't mistakes, Tristan. Those were decisions." Tristan's hands clenched on the table. "My family is losing everything." "No," Diana corrected. "Your family is losing what I gave them. What they always had, their cruelty, their arrogance, their absolute conviction of superiority. That's still intact. They're just experiencing the consequences of treating people as disposable." "Please." The word came out desperate. "Diana, I know I hurt you. I know I was terrible, but we can start over. We can build something real now. Now that I know who you really are." Diana looked at him for a long moment. This man she'd loved enough to hide herself for. This man who'd convinced her that smallness was safety. "That's the thing, Tristan. You want to start over now that you know what I'm worth. But you couldn't love me when you thought I was worthless. That tells me everything I need to know about your capacity for love." She slid a folder across the table. Her attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, nodded approvingly. "The divorce papers," Diana said. "I'm asking for nothing except my freedom. Everything I brought into the marriage stays mine. Everything you had before we married stays yours." "I don't have anything," Tristan said hollowly. "The firm is collapsing. I'm living in a studio apartment. I can't afford a lawyer." "I know." Diana gestured to the man sitting beside Rebecca. "This is Marcus Liu, excellent attorney. One of the best in the city. I've retained him to represent you. Pro bono." Tristan stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm not you, Tristan. I don't kick people when they're down, even when they've earned it. Because I want this divorce to be fair and final. Because despite everything, I don't actually want to destroy you. I just want to be free of you." Rebecca pushed the papers closer to Tristan. "Mr. Liu will review everything with you. I can assure you the terms are more than generous. Ms. Anderson is entitled to nothing from you. You are entitled to nothing from her. Clean break." Tristan looked at the papers like they were a death sentence. In a way, they were. The death of the life he'd thought he was building. The comfortable existence funded by a woman he'd treated like a servant. "What if I don't sign?" he asked quietly. Diana's expression didn't change. "Then we go to court. Every detail of our marriage becomes public record. Every cruelty, every affair, every instance of your family's abuse, every anonymous payment I made to save you from your own failures. All of it aired publicly." She leaned forward slightly. "Sign the papers, Tristan. Take the generous terms. Move on with your life. Become someone better. But do it far away from me." Tristan's hands shook as he picked up the pen. He signed. Diana watched him write his name, finalizing the end of their marriage. She felt nothing but profound relief. "Your attorney will be in touch about finalizing everything," Rebecca said crisply. "Mr. Parker, I suggest you take advantage of Mr. Liu's counsel. He's offered to help you with some of your other legal matters as well." Tristan looked up at Diana one last time. "I'm sorry for all of it. I truly am." "I believe you," Diana said. "I just don't care anymore." She stood, gathered her things, and walked out of the conference room without looking back. In the elevator down to the lobby, Rebecca smiled slightly. "You handled that with remarkable grace," she said. "Grace has nothing to do with it," Diana replied. "I just wanted it over. Cleanly. Finally. Well, it will be. 30 days and you're legally free." Diana stepped out into the afternoon sunlight. 30 days until her divorce was final. 30 days until the last legal tie to Tristan Parker was severed forever. She could wait 30 days. She'd already waited 3 years to remember who she was. Another month was nothing. The media frenzy continued for weeks. Diana ignored all of it. She'd said what she needed to say at the press conference. Everything else was just noise. Instead, she focused on work. Real work. Unencumbered work. She rented a warehouse space in the fashion district. Not a garage studio where she hid like her passion was shameful. A real, legitimate, beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows and room to create without apology. The transformation of the warehouse took 3 months. Diana hired contractors, designers, worked with architects to create something perfect. And that's when she met Lucas Cole. He arrived on a Tuesday morning, tool belt slung low on his hips, wearing work-worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. He had kind eyes and calloused hands and absolutely no idea who she was. "Ms. Anderson?" He extended his hand. "Lucas Cole. I'll be heading up the renovation team." Diana shook his hand, surprised by how warm it was. "Please call me Diana." "Diana, then." He smiled, and it was genuine. Not the calculated charm Tristan had wielded like a weapon. Just honest warmth. I've looked at your plans. The design is beautiful. You've got a good eye for space. Thank you. I want this to be perfect. It will be. Lucas pulled out a tablet showing her 3D renderings. I took the liberty of suggesting a few modifications. Nothing major. Just some thoughts on how to maximize the natural light. They spent an hour going over plans. Lucas was professional, knowledgeable, and refreshingly straightforward. He didn't condescend. Didn't dismiss her ideas. He listened, offered suggestions, and treated her input as valuable. It was such a stark contrast to Tristan that Diana almost didn't know how to process it. One question, Lucas said as they wrapped up. The plans show this space is half studio, half classroom. Are you planning to teach? Eventually, Diana said. I want to create a free design school for kids who can't afford formal training. Give back to the community. Lucas's expression shifted to something approaching respect. That's really something. My daughter would love something like that. She's 7, obsessed with drawing and making things. I can barely afford her art supplies, much less classes. Your daughter's welcome here anytime once we're up and running, Diana said impulsively. You don't even know if she has talent. Talent can be taught. Passion can't. If she loves creating, that's all that matters. Lucas smiled again, and Diana felt something warm unfold in her chest. Something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe, or possibility. I'll hold you to that, Lucas said. Over the following weeks, Lucas and his team transformed the warehouse. Diana came by daily to check progress, and somehow those check-ins always involved long conversations with Lucas. He told her about his daughter Lily, about his ex-wife who'd left them both for a touring musician when Lily was 3, about rebuilding his life as a single father. It was hard at first, Lucas admitted one afternoon, taking a break from installing new windows, feeling like I'd failed, like I wasn't enough to make her stay. Diana understood that feeling intimately. What changed? Lily. She reminded me that just because one person couldn't see my value doesn't mean I don't have value. Kids are wise like that. Diana thought about that, about how she'd let Tristan's inability to see her define her worth. Your daughter sounds remarkable, she said. She is. Exhausting, but remarkable. Lucas hesitated, then added, she saw an article about you, about the whole MA revelation. She's been talking about you non-stop. Says your butterfly designs make her feel floaty and brave. Diana's heart squeezed. Floaty and brave. I love that. She wants to meet you, the famous designer. Lucas looked slightly embarrassed. I told her you're probably too busy. I'm never too busy for a 7-year-old who feels floaty and brave, Diana said. Bring her by. I'd love to meet her. Lily Cole arrived the following Saturday, a small whirlwind of energy and excitement. She wore a dress she'd clearly tried to design herself, covered in hand-drawn butterflies. Ms. Anderson. She rushed forward, then stopped short, suddenly shy. Your designs are the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Diana knelt down to Lily's level. Thank you, sweetheart. And please call me Diana. Ms. Anderson makes me feel ancient. You're not ancient. You're beautiful. Like your dresses. Over Lucas's protests, Diana spent the entire afternoon with Lily. They sketched together. Diana showed her basic sewing techniques. Lily asked 10,000 questions without taking a breath. Why butterflies? Lily asked at one point. Why are they your special symbol? Diana thought about how to answer. Because butterflies transform. They start as caterpillars, completely ordinary. Then they go into a cocoon and come out as something beautiful. They remind us that we can change. That we can become who we're meant to be. Were you a caterpillar? Lily asked with a child's directness. Yes, Diana said honestly. For a long time. But I'm a butterfly now. Good, Lily said seriously. Butterflies are better. When Lucas came to collect his daughter at the end of the day, Lily threw her arms around Diana. Thank you for teaching me. Can I come back? Please. Diana looked at Lucas over Lily's head. saw something soft and warm in his expression. "Anytime you want," Diana said. Lily became a regular fixture at the studio. She'd arrive after school, do her homework at Diana's work table, then sketch or sew or ask endless questions about design. And Lucas would pick her up, always staying to chat, bringing coffee, sharing stories about his day. Slowly, carefully, Diana felt something shifting. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The understanding that maybe she could trust again. Maybe she could build something real with someone who saw her clearly. 6 months after the press conference, the divorce was final. Diana received the paperwork on a Tuesday afternoon. She was in her studio when the messenger arrived. She signed for the envelope, opened it, read the single page that legally ended her marriage to Tristan Parker. She felt nothing but relief. Patricia called moments later. "I heard the divorce was finalized. How are you feeling?" "Free," Diana said. "Completely, entirely free." "Good, because I have news. The Costume Institute wants to commission a new piece. The Met Gala wants you as a featured designer next year. Paris wants to host a retrospective. Diana, the entire fashion world is at your feet." Diana looked around her studio, at the half-finished designs covering every surface, at Lily's homework spread across the corner table, at the space she'd created to be fully, unapologetically herself. "That's wonderful," she said. "But Patricia, can they wait until Monday? I'm teaching a class tonight." Patricia laughed. "You've changed. The old you would have dropped everything. The old me was hiding. This me has priorities." That evening, Lucas arrived to pick up Lily and found Diana covered in fabric scraps, showing a group of neighborhood kids basic embroidery techniques. He leaned against the doorframe, watching with a soft expression. When the class ended and the kids filtered out, Lucas helped Diana clean up. "You're good with them," he said. "The kids. They love you." "I love this," Diana admitted. "Teaching, sharing, creating community. It matters more than any runway show." Lucas set down the fabric he was folding and turned to face her fully. "Diana, I need to tell you something." Her heart jumped. "Okay. I know you're still healing from everything that happened with your ex-husband. I know you're rediscovering who you are. I'm not trying to rush you or pressure you into anything." He took a breath. "But I'd really like to take you to dinner. Just the two of us. As a date." Diana's first instinct was panic. Protection. The walls she'd built to keep herself safe. But then she looked at Lucas. Really looked at him. This man who'd been nothing but kind. Who loved his daughter fiercely. Who built beautiful things with patient hands. Who'd never once made her feel like she needed to be smaller. "I'd like that," she said. "I'm not sure I'm ready yet, but I'd like that." Lucas's smile was warm and understanding. "Then I'll wait. Take your time, Diana. I'm not going anywhere." And he meant it. Over the following months, Lucas waited. Patiently. Without pressure. He and Lily became part of Diana's daily life. Museum visits where Lily asked a million questions. Casual dinners where Lucas cooked and Diana brought dessert. Design sessions where Lily sketched with unselfconscious joy. Diana felt herself healing. Slowly. The wounds Tristan had left weren't disappearing, but they were transforming. Becoming scars instead of open injuries. And as she healed, she started to believe she could love again. Not the desperate, diminishing love she'd had with Tristan, but something steady, real. A love that made her more herself, not less. If you're watching this and you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone tried to break you down, I want you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. If you believe that the person who destroyed you doesn't get to define your future. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, or just say, "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline," because Diana's story isn't just about revenge. It's about remembering who you are when someone spent years trying to make you forget. Subscribe if you want more stories about people who refuse to stay broken. More stories about the kind of triumph that comes from choosing yourself. 1 year after the press conference, Diana stood in the same Metropolitan Fashion Institute where she'd revealed herself. But everything was different now. The new exhibition was called Metamorphosis, an entire collection chronicling transformation, healing, and the courage to rebuild. The centerpiece was a gown titled The Sky Rebuilt, a massive piece that seemed woven from starlight itself. Hand-embroidered constellations flowed from hem to bodice. Each star represented a moment of choosing herself, of refusing to stay small, of stepping into her power. Critics were calling it her masterpiece. But Diana wasn't focused on the reviews. She was focused on the people around her. Her father, healthy again after successful cancer treatment, discussing architectural theory with a young student. They'd spent the past year rebuilding their relationship. Sunday dinners, long conversations about her mother, about grief and healing and the time they'd both lost to sorrow. Patricia, resplendent in red, charming a potential donor. Her best friend. Her sister in every way that mattered. And Lucas and Lily. Lily wearing a fancy dress and her beloved astronaut backpack, pointing excitedly at each design. Lucas in a suit he'd clearly bought for this occasion, his hand warm in Diana's. They'd been together for 6 months now, slowly, carefully building something real. He'd met her father. She'd become a fixture in Lily's life, teaching her design and attending her school plays and reading bedtime stories when Lucas worked late. It wasn't the desperate, all-consuming thing she'd felt for Tristan. It was better. It was steady. It was love that made her more herself, not less. "You look happy," Lucas murmured, squeezing her hand. "I am," Diana said. Completely, impossibly happy. The exhibition hall filled with the same crowd from a year ago. Fashion critics and journalists and celebrities. But this time, Diana wasn't revealing herself. She was celebrating herself. Patricia stepped to the podium to introduce the collection. The crowd quieted immediately. 1 year ago, Diana Anderson revealed herself to be M.A., one of our generation's most important designers. Tonight, we celebrate not just her continued brilliance, but her courage. Because this collection isn't just about fashion. It's about transformation, about rising from ashes, about refusing to let the people who tried to diminish you define your story. Applause erupted. Diana smiled from her position at the side of the hall. "I won't keep you from the work," Patricia continued. "But I will say this. Diana Anderson is proof that hiding your light doesn't make others love you more. It just makes the world darker. And her decision to step into the sun has illuminated all of us." More applause. Then the exhibition officially opened. People flooded through the galleries, marveling at designs that told Diana's story in fabric and thread. Diana walked through with Lucas and Lily, watching people interact with her work. A young woman crying in front of a dress called Rising. A critic taking notes in front of a piece titled No More Apologies. A group of design students debating the symbolism in Breaking Open. "Ms. Diana," Lily tugged at her hand. "That one looks like you." She pointed to a portrait Diana had commissioned. A woman in a gown made entirely of butterflies, each one flying toward a sky full of stars. The woman's face was turned upward, joyful, free, fully herself. "It is me," Diana said, "or who I'm becoming." "I think you're already her," Lily said with the wisdom of children who see clearly. Diana knelt down and hugged this remarkable little girl who'd become such an important part of her life. Over Lily's head, she met Lucas's eyes. He looked at her with such genuine love, such uncomplicated joy in her existence. And Diana finally understood what she'd been missing all those years with Tristan. Not someone who tolerated her despite her power. Someone who loved her because of it. A commotion at the entrance made Diana look up. Patricia appeared at her elbow, her expression carefully neutral. "Diana, darling, your ex-husband is here." Diana's stomach tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "Tristan, he asked to speak with you. I can have security remove him if you'd prefer." Diana thought about it, about whether she wanted this confrontation, whether she needed it. Then she saw him, standing near the entrance, looking uncertain. He'd lost weight. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by something modest but clean. He looked older, humbler, diminished. Let him through, Diana said. I'll talk to him. Lucas tensed beside her. Are you sure? I'm sure. He can't hurt me anymore. He never could, really. I was just too lost to remember that. She walked toward Tristan, leaving Lucas and Lily with Patricia. Met him near a quiet corner of the gallery. They stood facing each other. Diana in her designer original, confident and self-possessed. Tristan in his modest suit, smaller somehow than she remembered. Diana! His voice was rough. Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Tristan? I wanted to see your work. The new collection. He gestured around them. It's extraordinary. You're extraordinary. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. So am I. I'm working as a junior architect now, Tristan said unprompted. Small firm across town. Starting over from the bottom. My family, we've all scattered. Dad works for a property management company. Mom volunteers at a community center. Maggie's doing freelance writing. Louis is working retail. We're all just trying to rebuild from the wreckage we made. I'm sorry for your losses, Diana said, and she meant it. But I'm not sorry for stopping the support. You needed to stand on your own. I know. Tristan looked at her directly for the first time. I hear you're seeing someone. The contractor who renovated your studio. Lucas. Yes. And his daughter Lily. Does he make you happy? Diana thought about lazy Sunday mornings designing with Lily. About Lucas's hands, steady and sure as he built beautiful things. About feeling seen and celebrated instead of tolerated. Yes, she said simply. He does. Tristan nodded slowly. Good. That's good. You deserve that. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Diana, I'm glad you stopped hiding. The world is better with you visible in it. I'm just sorry I tried to keep you in the shadows. I'm sorry too, Diana said. Sorry that you were so insecure you needed me to be small. Sorry that you couldn't love me when you thought I was ordinary. Sorry that you threw away something real for something that looked impressive. Tristan flinched, but he nodded. I deserved that. You did. But Tristan, I hope you learn from this. I hope you become someone better. Someone who doesn't need others to be less so you can feel like more. Not for me. For yourself. I'm trying, he said quietly. Every day, I'm trying. He left then, walking back through the exhibition, past designs that represented everything he'd been too blind to see. Diana watched him go and felt nothing but quiet closure. Some people teach us who we are by showing us who we refuse to become. Tristan had taught her that lesson thoroughly. Lucas appeared at her side, Lily holding his hand. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. More than okay. Diana smiled at them both. This man and his daughter who'd become essential to her life. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Lily tugged at her hand. Ms. Diana, can you teach me how to embroider stars? I want to make someone feel floaty and brave like you do. Diana knelt down to Lily's level. I'd be honored. How about we start this weekend? Yes. Lily hugged her impulsively, and Diana felt her heart expand. Over Lily's head, she met Lucas's eyes. He looked at her with such genuine love, such clear appreciation for who she was. I love you, she said suddenly, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. Lucas's smile was brilliant. I love you too. I have for months. I was just waiting for you to catch up. I'm caught up now. They stayed at the exhibition for hours. Diana talked to critics and collectors and young designers. She watched people interact with her work, saw them moved by the stories told in fabric and thread. And she stood with Lucas and Lily, this family she hadn't expected but desperately needed, and felt whole. The gallery swirled with celebration. Her designs, finally signed with her real name, displayed for the world to see. Her father healthy and present. Her chosen family surrounding her. And Diana Anderson, designer, billionaire, woman who'd survived being destroyed and rebuilt herself into something stronger, finally understood that she was enough. Not despite anything. Not because of anything. Simply, completely, radiantly enough. As the evening wound down and the crowd began to thin, Patricia pulled Diana aside. "There's someone here who wants to meet you," she said, her eyes twinkling mysteriously. "Patricia, I've met about 300 people tonight. Not like this one." Patricia led her to a quiet corner where a young woman stood, maybe 19 or 20, looking nervous and excited. "Diana, this is Sarah Martinez." "Sarah?" "Diana Anderson." The young woman's eyes went wide. "Ms. Anderson, I can't believe I'm actually meeting you. Your work changed my life." Diana smiled warmly. "How so?" "I saw the Phoenix gown 3 years ago. I was in a terrible relationship. Someone who made me feel like I was nothing. But that dress, the way it burned and then rose into something beautiful, it made me realize I could do that too. I left him that week. Started design school. I just got accepted into Parsons on a full scholarship." Diana felt tears prick her eyes. "Sarah, that's incredible. It's because of you. Because you showed me that transformation is possible. That we can burn down who we were and become who we're meant to be." Sarah hesitated, then added, "And when you revealed yourself last year, when you told everyone you've been hiding and finally decided to step into the light, it gave me courage to apply to Parsons. To stop hiding my own dreams." Diana hugged this young woman she'd never met but had somehow helped save. "Never hide your light again," Diana whispered. "Promise me." "I promise," Sarah said. After Sarah left, Diana stood quietly for a moment. This was why it mattered. Not the accolades or the money or the critical praise, but this, the young woman who saw herself in a design and found courage to change her life. "Ready to go home?" Lucas asked, appearing with a sleepy Lily in his arms. Diana looked around the gallery one more time, at 15 years of work, at proof that hiding hadn't protected her. It had only delayed her becoming. "Yes," she said. "Let's go home." They drove back to Diana's warehouse studio, which had become a second home for Lucas and Lily. While Lucas put Lily to bed in the small apartment Diana had built above the studio space, Diana stood at her work table. A new design was taking shape, something she couldn't quite see yet but could feel forming. Lucas came downstairs, poured 2 glasses of wine, handed one to Diana. "What are you working on?" he asked. "I'm not sure yet. Something about beginnings. About building families from broken pieces." Lucas wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Sounds perfect." They stood like that for a long moment, looking out at the city lights through the warehouse windows. "Diana," Lucas said quietly, "I know we've only been together 6 months. I know you're still healing. But I need you to know something." "What?" "I see you. All of you. The brilliant designer and the wounded woman. The billionaire and the person who just wants to be loved for herself. The confident public figure and the private person who's learning to trust again. I see all of it, and I love all of it." Diana turned in his arms, looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "I spent 3 years with someone who only loved the parts of me he could control," she said. "And 6 months with you has shown me what real love actually looks like." "What does it look like?" "Like this. Like someone who celebrates me instead of containing me. Like patience and kindness and building something steady instead of dramatic. Like loving a 7-year-old girl who isn't mine by blood but feels like mine by choice." "She is yours," Lucas said. "If you want her. We both are." Diana kissed him, slow and sure and full of promise. "I want you both," she said. "I want this. All of it." They stayed up late that night talking about the future. About maybe moving in together. About Lily and schooling and whether Diana wanted more children. About building a life together deliberately and carefully. "No rushing," Lucas said. "We have time." "We have time," Diana agreed. She went to sleep that night in Lucas's arms, in the warehouse studio that represented her reclaimed life, surrounded by designs that told her story of destruction and resurrection. And for the first time in years, she dreamed not of burning but of flying. 3 years after the press conference. 3 years after Diana had stepped into the light and reclaimed herself. The warehouse studio had evolved into something magical. Half remained Diana's personal workspace, fabrics in various stages of creation filling every surface. The other half had become a thriving free design school for underprivileged children, funded entirely by the Diana Anderson Foundation. On this particular Saturday morning, 20 students aged 7 to 17 filled the space with creative energy. Young designers creating garments on dress forms while instructors circulated with encouragement and technical guidance. Lily, now 10 years old and still determined to be an astronaut veterinarian president fashion designer, led a group of younger kids in embroidering a butterfly garden onto a massive quilt that would be auctioned for charity. Lucas had just finished installing new skylights, flooding the space with perfect natural light. He climbed down from the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans, and Diana stood at the center of it all, one hand resting on her rounded belly, the other holding a sketchbook. 6 months pregnant with their daughter. They'd chosen the name Luna, after the light that shines even in darkness. "Ms. Diana," one of the teenage students called out. "Can you help me with this hemline? I can't get it even." Diana made her way over, moving carefully with her pregnant belly. "Let's see. You're pulling the fabric too tight. Here, try this." She demonstrated the technique, watching the student's face light up with understanding. "You're a natural teacher," Lucas said, appearing at her elbow with water. "Drink. You've been on your feet for 2 hours." Diana accepted the water gratefully. "Thank you. How are the skylights?" "Perfect. The light in here is going to be incredible." "Good. I want these kids to have the best possible space to create." Her phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. "The Met Gala committee is calling again. They want you as chair next year. They're very persistent." "Thoughts?" Diana smiled and texted back. "Thoughts are, I'm teaching a class and making dinner with my family tonight. They can email my assistant on Monday and she'll tell them the same thing I've told them for 3 years." "No." She pocketed the phone and returned to helping a shy 13-year-old mix the perfect shade of sunset pink for an evening gown design. The day passed in a blur of creativity and laughter. Students working intently on their projects. Lily showing the younger kids her embroidery technique. Lucas installing the final skylight while fielding questions from curious teenagers about construction and engineering. This was Diana's life now. Not red carpets and fashion shows, though she still designed and still showed her work. But this, teaching, building community, creating space for young designers who might never have access otherwise. She still took commissions, still designed collections that critics praised and museums displayed. But her priority was here, in this converted warehouse with these students who reminded her why creating mattered. As the class wound down and students filtered out, Lily helped clean up fabric scraps. "Mom," she said casually, and Diana's heart still jumped every time Lily called her that. Lucas had proposed a year ago, and they'd gotten married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Lily had been the flower girl and had asked if she could call Diana Mom now. Diana had cried for an hour. "Yes, sweetheart. When Luna is born, will you still have time to teach me design?" Diana knelt down, slightly awkward with her belly, and took Lily's hands. "Always. You're my first and favorite student. That will never change." Lily grinned and hugged her carefully, mindful of the baby. That evening, the 3 of them, soon to be 4, gathered around the kitchen table in the apartment above the studio. Lucas had cooked his famous pasta. Lily chattered about her day at school. Diana half listened, her hand absently rubbing her belly, feeling Luna kick and turn. "Earth to Diana," Lucas said, smiling. "Where'd you go?" "Just thinking," Diana said, "about how different everything is now. How different I am." "Better different?" Lily asked. "Infinitely better different." After dinner, after Lily had finished her homework and Lucas had dozed off reading on the couch, Diana stood in her home studio. The design she'd been working on for months was finally complete. A woman in a gown made entirely of butterflies, each one flying toward a sky full of stars. The woman's face was turned upward, joyful, free, fully herself. And on her shoulders, a small girl reaching for the stars with fearless hands. Diana had painted Lily into the design, her daughter in every way that mattered. She picked up her pencil and added the final detail. her signature crimson butterfly in the corner. Then, for the first time in her entire design career, she added words beneath the image. For everyone who was told they were too much, you are exactly enough. Never hide your wings. She stepped back, looking at what she'd created. Not just a design, a testimony, promise, a declaration that she would never, ever make herself small again. Her phone buzzed, an email notification. She almost ignored it, but the subject line caught her attention. From Tristan Parker. Diana hesitated, then opened it. The email was short. Diana, I saw the announcement about your pregnancy. Congratulations. You're going to be an amazing mother. I also saw the profiles about your design school. What you're building is incredible. I wanted you to know that I'm engaged. Her name is Rachel. She's a teacher. Kind, patient, nothing like Vanessa. She knows everything about what I did to you, and she's helping me become better. I'm in therapy, working on myself, trying to be someone worthy of the second chance I've been given. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that your courage to leave, to demand better, it taught me that I needed to change. Thank you for that. I hope you're happy. From everything I see, you deserve to be. Tristan. Diana read the email twice, felt nothing but mild satisfaction that he seemed to be doing the work to become better. She didn't respond, didn't need to. Tristan Parker was a chapter of her life that had closed completely. She wished him well, hoped he'd learned, but she had no desire to engage further. She deleted the email and returned to her design. Lucas appeared behind her, wrapped his arms around her gently, his hands joining hers on her belly. What are you thinking about? He murmured against her hair. How lucky I am, Diana said honestly. How different everything turned out from what I planned. Better. Infinitely better. I thought I wanted the fairy tale. The wealthy husband, the prestigious family, the appearance of perfection. But what I have now is so much more real. Luna kicked against their joined hands, and they both laughed. She's active tonight, Lucas said. She's excited. She knows she's coming into a family that will celebrate her, not contain her. They stood like that for a long time, Diana and Lucas and Luna and the designs that surrounded them. The life they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. In the years since Diana had revealed herself, since she'd walked away from a marriage that was killing her slowly, she'd built something extraordinary. Not just a fashion empire, though her designs were still celebrated worldwide, but a life, a real, messy, beautiful life. She'd reconciled with her father. They had dinner every Sunday, talking about architecture and design and her mother's memory with joy instead of pain. She'd built deep friendships. Patricia was Luna's godmother. The design students were her extended family. She'd found love again. Not the desperate, diminishing thing she'd had with Tristan, but steady, real partnership. Lucas loved her at her messiest and most brilliant, celebrated her success and held her through the nightmares that still came sometimes. She'd become a mother. Lily had healed something in Diana she hadn't known was broken, had shown her that love didn't have to be biological to be real. And soon Luna would arrive, another daughter to teach and celebrate and raise to never, ever make herself small. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I need you to do something right now. I need you to understand that Diana's story is every person's story who has ever been told they were too much. Too loud, too ambitious, too bright, too successful, too anything. Her story is for everyone who has made themselves smaller believing that's what love required. So here's what I need from you. Hit that subscribe button if you believe people can rebuild themselves after being destroyed. Smash that like button if you believe the person who tried to diminish you doesn't get to write your ending. And comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your own story of becoming visible again. Or just say, I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because these stories matter. Your story matters. And Diana's journey from invisible to unstoppable, that's possible for every single person watching this. Share this video with someone who needs to remember they're enough. Someone who's hiding their light. Someone who's made themselves small. Let's build a community of people who refuse to disappear. This is Mr. Hearthline Stories. Your story isn't over. is just beginning, and the best chapters are always the ones where you choose yourself. Until next time, stay unstoppable.